If you are spending hours doing stuff in your business that you wish that you could just hand off to a team member, but hiring feels out of reach right now, whether that's time, money, or just capacity, what if Airtable and Automations could do that stuff for you? Hey, I'm Ashley. I'm an Airtable nerd, systems expert, and the founder of Systems Over Stress. And I really believe that if you are stressed out in your business, there is a system that can solve it, and most all of those systems are built on Airtable. If your backend feels messy, or if you're drowning in admin work, Airtable Automations might just be your new favorite thing. I really consider Airtable and Airtable Automations my first hire, and in this video, we're doing a quick tour of what Airtable Automations actually are. We're not building anything today, but this is just a lay of the land so you can understand how these magical little tools work, and so you can get your wheels turning on all of the amazing things that you can automate in the future. And if you're excited about Airtable, which I know you will be after this video, I've got a free masterclass called Why You Need Airtable to Track Client Progress and Scale Without Stress. The link for that is in the description below. All right, let's get nerdy about Airtable Automations together. So before I get into Airtable Automations with you, I want to zoom out for a second and talk about what Airtable is, because before we talk about Airtable Automations, you should know what Airtable is in general. So Airtable is a database software that replaces your spreadsheets, but in a way that is actually going to work for managing your clients. If you are managing your clients in Google Sheets, ClickUp, or Notion, you have seen probably some growing pains as your client roster gets bigger. You're losing things, all of the information lives in different silos. Airtable is the best place to manage clients. I have so many videos about specifically how to use Airtable for client management. When all of your data is organized about your clients in one central spot in Airtable, then you can use that data to trigger automations. So now I'm going to get into, I've just used the word trigger. So we're getting into what Airtable automations are. So Automation 101, if you're not familiar, works on a very simple kind of foundation. There's a trigger and an action. So the trigger is when this happens, then do this, the action. So there are so many different triggers and actions that you can do inside of Airtable without having to use other automation software like Zapier or Pabbly. I will have another video that shows you and breaks down when we use Airtable versus when we use other automation platforms. But for the most part, as much as we can, we use internal Airtable automations because they are so robust. There are so many different ways to use automations, and a lot of the times when you are so used to doing things manually and you're not thinking in an automation's brain, it can feel really overwhelming. But the first thing I want you to think about is all of those things that you do in your business. When this happens, I do this. Make a list of them. If you want, put them in the comments below and we can see if we can automate them. But some familiar ones are when somebody books a sales call, I email them follow-up details. I email them a form to fill out. Airtable Automations could do that for you. Or when a client is almost up for re-enrollment, when they have 30 days until they're supposed to graduate from my program, we manually send them a reminder and welcoming them to re-enroll. Sometimes I forget to do that. Sometimes I am too nervous to do it. There's all these reasons why sometimes things slip through the cracks. Sometimes you're at capacity. Sometimes the team is sick. Sometimes somebody forgets. Sometimes you're nervous and don't want to do it. When you set up automations, all of those things kind of start humming in the background and are working without you working. So when this happens, then do this. That's all an automation is. There can be very, very intricate automations. When this happens, then do this and this and this, and only do it if it's like this. We will not get into all of that, but you can get really intricate with automations. But that is really the basics of it. All of those little admin tasks that you and your team are doing can most likely be automated through Airtable Automations. And honestly, once you get the hang of it, it gets a little addicting because you're like, oh, I am doing this manually. Could I make an automation for that? And the answer almost always is yes, so which is really fun. So I really encourage you to start thinking in more of an automations mindset, and let me show you exactly what it looks like in Airtable and kind of what's capable inside of the platform. Okay, so this is an example of Airtable. So if you've never been in the back end of Airtable, it looks like this. This is actually a version of my Client Hub, which is available to purchase as a template that has built-in automations, but I wanted to show you kind of, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, what we all recommend to put inside of a client hub. We call it a client hub. Is basically your client CRM. So we've got a primary client record, and then the client's onboarding form, their application, any client notes, one-on-one calls, group call questions, results tracking, support tickets or feedback reviews, testimonials, all that good stuff we want to have in one central location inside of Airtable, because like I said, the more data it's in here, the more triggers we have to play with. So we couldn't make a onboarding trigger of, oh, new onboarding form filled out if the onboarding form isn't inside of Airtable. So that's why the more we put in Airtable, the more possibilities we create for ourselves for automations in the future. So a lot of the times people will be like, oh, like my onboarding form is in Google Forms and I'm pretty happy with it over there. And you're just going to hit a wall because you won't be able to do fun things with your automations, with your onboarding form if it's in Google Sheets. So the more we put into Airtable, the better. So that's why I really recommend having a client hub like this. Your client CRM will live in Airtable. I have so many videos on that. I'll link a playlist as well. But you'll see we have data. So all of your data lives in Airtable. And then we have a whole little section here called automations. We're not gonna touch interfaces and forms for now, but let's go into automations. Here's what it looks like on the back end. We have on the left side is all of our different automations. You can have different sections, so you can keep yourself organized. So you can see we have onboarding form automations, we have application received automations, all those fun things. So there's so many automations you can do. At the time of this recording, I think you can literally have 50 automations inside of here, inside of one base. But I want to show you what's possible with our triggers. So if I go to create automation here, you're going to see add trigger. So that's all of those. If this happens, then do all the other things. So here's all of the if this happens. When a record matches a condition, when a form is submitted, when a record is created, when a record's updated, when a record enters a view, at a scheduled time, when a webhook is received. If you are a super nerd and you know about webhooks, then you can really do a lot here. We won't touch webhooks here. This is more for beginners. When an email is received or when a button is clicked. And then there's also other integrations like Google Calendar, when an event is created, Google Forms, when a response is arrived. I wouldn't recommend this. I know I just said don't just build it in Airtable Forms. It's going to be better. Google Sheets, when a row is created. I don't recommend doing this stuff just because you can do it all in Airtable, so you might as well. And there's also some Outlook and email and calendar integrations. So I'll share with you the ones that most of our clients use the most and the ones that we're constantly using. So we use when a record matches a condition, when a form is submitted, when a record is created. Those three are really the biggest. And then I'd say at a scheduled time. So I'm going to cover those four in depth now. So when a record matches a condition, what that means, and it's pretty straightforward, it can feel very intimidating, but just literally think of it as straightforward step-by-step as possible. When a record matches a condition. So let's say that we have in our primary client record, I'm going to go to the data. Let's say that you have a client, you have statuses here, and this status says that they have been inactive, right? So you have a virtual assistant or you have a co-coach who is saying, hey, test person 2 is inactive. So that is something that a team member did. And so what you can say is when a record matches a condition, when a status is inactive, then do things. So think of all of those different things. We'll get into what those things are in the next one. Mostly it's send a Slack message, send an email, update a record. There's some things we can do, but when a record matches a condition, there's so many different ways you can use that. So the next one is when a form is submitted. Again, super straightforward, pretty standard language, but we have all of our forms built in Airtable. So this is an example of all of the forms you would have for client management. So applications, onboarding, results tracking, pre-submitted calls, feedback reviews. Let's look at an onboarding form, for example. The form builder in Airtable is super beautiful, drag and drop, love it. So you can trigger automations when a form is submitted. So you can pick the table because all form responses go into the backend of a table. So you pick the table and you pick a form, and then you can do all of the actions, which we'll get into in a second. When a form is submitted, so if you are ever doing anything manual when a client submits a form, whether that is a Q&A call, a review, anything like that, there's automations that you can do inside of Airtable. The next one, also pretty straightforward, is when a record is created. So if there is a new record that gets created, let's say that you have a new student gets added into your primary client record, then you can trigger automations just from that. So anytime a literal new record is created, then you can do a trigger that way. I'm going to skip when a new record is updated because we don't really use that. We really recommend just using when record matches a condition. It captures more. When record enters a view, same thing. We don't use that a ton either, but at scheduled time is pretty cool too. So if there are any automations or if there's any manual work that you're doing that you say on every Monday, I send my clients a check-in email and ask them certain things and tell them what we've been working on, any type of email like that, Airtable can automate that for you. So that's the part where like people have no idea all of the possibilities that Airtable can do. So if we say at a scheduled time, you can say every minute, you probably wouldn't want to do that. Every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month, or a one-off thing. So you can say on the first, every month on the first of the month at 5 a.m., starting the 7th, then you can trigger action. So you can say, send a Slack message to my team, checking in on them, send Slack messages to my clients, like whatever you want to do. There's a bunch of different automations. So those are our main triggers that we use. So when a record matches a condition, when a form is submitted, when a record is created, and at a scheduled time, those are the 4 that we love the most. Just start to think, really, the more data you have in here, the more you can trigger automations based on that data. And these are kind of the 4 ways you can really use the triggers appropriately. Okay, now let's talk the fun part, which is actions. So we've got the triggers. When this happens, then do this. The then do this part is all of these actions. So we'll probably touch on advanced logic in another video, conditional logic and repeating groups. Those are very cool, but just for this beginner tutorial, let's look at the actions. So you have Airtable actions that are specific to the Airtable base itself. So send email. I actually, pro tip, do not recommend using this one because there is one that goes from Gmail instead, which I think is a lot better. But we've got Airtable, send email. We don't use that. Create record, update record, find record, sort list, run script, or generate with AI. Some of these things are a little more advanced for you if you're a beginner, but things like update record, that's a really cool one. Create record. Find record is related to some other next steps, more advanced stuff. Sort list, run script, I wouldn't worry about that. But just know anytime you want to really update a record or create a record and you have a team member coming into your Airtable base and they're manually updating things, you can have Airtable Automations update that. So those are internal actions, but there's also external integrations too, which we really use a lot. So Slack or Teams, depending on what you use, most of my clients use Slack, you can send a message from the trigger. So that's awesome. Gmail, you can also send an email through Gmail. So those are the 2 we absolutely use the most. I'll give you some examples of what we use those for. But Slack and Gmail, calendar invite, create an event or update event, we don't really use that and our clients don't really, but you totally could. We don't do Google Forms or Google Sheets in my world, so we skip those entirely. Google Docs one is fine, but it's not super robust, so I wouldn't recommend it. GitHub issues we don't use, Facebook pages. If you use Outlook email instead of Gmail, you could totally use that. Same with calendar. And Hootsuite and Twilio, we don't use those. We really recommend with those scheduling of content to do it. We don't rely on scheduling tools like that just because we find that there's so many tools, like there's new platforms and like it's just not as robust as it could be. Those are the internal automations, actions that you have within Airtable. So Slack and Gmail, honestly, are the 2 biggest ones that you're going to use, and then create an update record. Those are the ones, and then once you get like a little more advanced inside of Airtable, you'll be using that find record and conditional logic and repeating groups quite a bit. But even just the simplicity of sending Slack messages and sending Gmail emails through Airtable is such a game changer for me and my clients. What you might be thinking is, hey, Ashley, like I have other automations that I don't see integrated here. Like I use ClickUp and I use Kajabi. Like why isn't Kajabi here? Why isn't ClickUp here? I know that those exist inside of Zapier. We'll do a whole other training on when you should use Airtable versus when you should use Zapier. But really, if you can do it in Airtable, do it in Airtable. And then if you have to use Zapier for ClickUp automations, for other workarounds, like for other tech that's not listed in these integrations, then you totally can. There's actually, now that I'm talking out loud and because you're watching this video, there's actually a really cool way to use Airtable automations to send tasks to ClickUp. If you're interested in that, let me know. I can make a whole special video on it, but that's kind of just like a secret hack. Those are the actions. So we've got when this happens, then send a Slack message, or then send an email, or then update my Airtable base. How many times have you gone into your spreadsheet and your spreadsheet is just out of date? With Airtable and some of these automations, you can say when a record matches a condition, update the record accordingly. So I'll give you an example of what that can look like. And I want you to put in the comments below if there's any automations that you're like, oh, my wheels are spinning. If I did this, could it do this? Let me know and I'll totally let you know in the chat. But what you can say when the record matches a condition, let's say our primary client record, when their onboarding form is empty, so they haven't filled out their onboarding form, and start date is number of days ago, 7. So anybody whose onboarding form hasn't been filled out and their start date is 7 days ago, I want to send them an email. So you just go to Gmail, send email, you connect your Gmail account here, and you are able to build out an automation. And what's really cool about building out these automations is that it's pretty straightforward, but you can bring in dynamic information from that record. So let me fill this out. So I'm going to say if onboarding form is empty and start date is number of days ago, 7. Let me fill out this person here. So test 2, their start date was the 28th and their onboarding form is empty. And let me put in a fake email for them. So this is all of their details. Let me grab their email. So we're going to say email@email.com. So go back to my automations. Then you just go through the list. And so you pick your Gmail account and then you see this 2 option. You can choose a record. That's the test. So we're going to say 2 email. We're mapping in the data from that record that triggered the automation. So we say, reminder, fill out your onboarding form. So let's say we want to say, hey, first name. Because the thing about automation, it doesn't have to feel cold and it doesn't have to be super sterile. You can make this email sound exactly like how you would send it. So that's really what I recommend is when you start to build out automations, automate the things that you're already doing manually. So pull up your past email that you normally check in on people. Hey, I'm so glad you joined the program. I noticed you haven't filled out your onboarding form. Please do so here. Right? You can play around with, formatting and all of those things. But if we click generate a preview and that pops up, so it's going to say, hi Tess, I'm so glad you joined the program. I know you haven't filled out your onboarding form. Please do so here. Again, you can customize this as you see fit. So all of those type of emails, and what's really nice about using the Gmail integration is that it's going to come right from your sent inbox in your Gmail. So if you want to follow up, you can follow up through your inbox. That's really cool. So we've got that, we've got the Gmail email, and then you can add more actions in the automation. So let's say you've got that, but you also want to send a Slack message to your team and just say, like, you pick the channel. So we say admin, and we say heads up. This person, their first and last name, has not completed their onboarding form, but has been emailed. Whatever you want to say. So that's really the bulk of our automations that we do, but it saves us so much time. It keeps my team organized. It keeps us all just like up to date, and it also just sends incredible engagement emails to our clients. So we use so many different types of triggers to send emails to my team and clients, to send Slack messages to my team. There's just so many different ways that you could use this. So that is really the overview of automations. There's so much it can do. We're really just scratching the surface, but I just wanted to create this video for you so you kind of understood like a little bit of the context, the bigger picture. So in future videos, when we're building these automations and really showing you the details of everything, you at least have a good foundation. I hope this was helpful for you and showed you what's possible inside of Airtable automations. I would love to know, please drop in the comments, what is one admin task that you would love to automate in your business using Airtable? Again, if you don't know what it would be, or if you think that you have an idea, but you want to see if it's possible, let me know. I am happy to answer you in the comments, and who knows, it might just be our next YouTube video. If this helped you to finally understand and demystify Airtable automations a little bit more, I am so glad. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have a full Airtable masterclass showing you all of the different ways that you can use it to manage your clients. There's a link to that in the description below. Highly recommend signing up for that. make sure that you hit subscribe here and be sure to check out all of the amazing videos we have about Airtable and how you can really use it to scale your client delivery, whether you're a coach, agency owner, service provider, all of that. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you in the next video.